Children's author Emily Madill is back with us, and her website, emilymadill.com, the author of several books. We've talked about them on our bookmark program and asked Emily to visit with us to talk about modeling and positive reinforcement. As a mother, you have firsthand knowledge, but you also see that watching society here, there are things we can do. Let's talk about teachable moments. Does that mean that when we make mistakes, we stop and explain it to children so it can be a teachable moment? Or if they make a mistake or something happens, you explain it to them? Is that what defines a teachable moment?
Yeah, I think that's a teachable moment, and also preventative things, like while we're engaging in activities with our kids, we can talk about those teachable moments with them to kind of make it more applicable and to not make it be so preachy that they're, getting in trouble for something, because I think a lot of the times it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, but if we cleverly kind of weave that in when we're engaging in activities with our kids, I think that goes a long way.
There are different schools of thought. There's no complete answer to the use of discipline, but without discipline, children have no barriers, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think kids need structure, and they need to have, fair consequences for their actions, and that's really what the world is about, and I think it's doing a disservice to our kids to not teach them that in the beginning, that if you do A, like if there's an action, there's going to be a reaction when you're out in the world. And I think we can still deliver that in a loving way to our kids, but I think it's really important to do that.
In the values listing, appreciation is important. It's not something that you necessarily have to teach, but you have to model it. So children have to see their parents appreciate things as they come to them, so that they will reflect that behavior back to their friends and perhaps even back to their parents, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like when you're just out in the world, shopping or meeting with friends and those kinds of things, I think that's, as parents, we can model that behavior as, using manners, if you have a sick friend, like bringing something to them and just being grateful to each other, like in our language, how we talk in the family home to one another. Like kids are sponges, so I think that's really important to model that as much as possible. I mean, we're all human, but I think those are the places to teach kids values and virtues.
In reading your books and seeing the examples as the characters interact, I think about the patience aspect of values. If we don't model patience as parents, kids will never learn it, and then they get started down a track of not having patience. And that's a value we need to teach. I think
that's huge, like the interactions that we have with our kids in the family home, where the boundaries are kind of, you don't have all that background noise and things that are happening out in life, and you're not as composed. You're more who you are in the family home, and I think that is the place where we can practice it the most. Like it'll make the most impact to our kids. So responding like in not such a reactive way, which again is difficult. We're all human, but I think as parents, if we go into that consciously, trying to be more patient in our reactions with one another, like even, as adults in the home, being more patient with each other.
Do you think that empathy and compassion comes naturally to children?
No, I think it's something that needs to be modeled again. I think, it could be fostered from the beginning, but I do think that that's something that needs to be, shown through being compassionate, whether it's to animals or young babies or with, aging grandparents. I think those are excellent ways of interacting, with other people and animals that teach children that. And again, modeling. I think it does come natural to them and for them, probably more so even than adults, but I think we do need to kind of create those environments for it to be fostered.
Hope. I see children as having hope on a more natural basis than adults, maybe because they haven't been contaminated by life's disappointments.
I definitely do agree with that. And I think, too, like setting goals and maybe when they do have a disappointment, like teaching those, that might be a teachable moment, too, to tell them not to lose hope and to kind of, maybe relay, personal experience that has happened to you to show that, maybe it didn't, pan out here, but, don't lose hope. And there's, lots of great books and resources out there where there's so many stories throughout history where you can see that the people don't lose hope. They hang on to that, and that's, really what keeps them going. So.
Also in your value listing is tenacity and determination.
Yes.
How does that come into play? You teach them not to give up after the first disappointment or if it doesn't come out right?
I I think so. Like in sports, it's, an excellent way to, if your kids are in sports or in any kind of activity that way, like, things don't come, like, I think it's just an instant kind of gratification type of society. Like, it's kind of like, oh, well, if I don't get it right now, then I'm just going to give up. Like, that's something I think that kids do a lot more nowadays than ever before. And, we're just used to having things kind of come instantaneously and easily, and if it doesn't, then they get discouraged, and that's just not really the reality of really succeeding in anything in life. Like, you have to have that determination, and you have to have that tenacity to keep pushing forward through the setbacks. And so I think sports is a wonderful way, if the kids have an aptitude for that teaches that, the practice. And yeah,
Couple of final areas here. How do you handle the issue of critical thinking?
I think that comes from like just not accepting things at face value, like having deeper discussions with your kids, and maybe, giving the question back to them, well, what do you think? Like, what, kind of put the ball back in their court, like not always feeding them all the information all the time, and to teach them to ask questions, and I mean, kids are naturally inquisitive, and maybe to foster those conversations rather than, shut it down because we're too busy or because, there's other things going on. I think again, that comes from modeling and just really allowing those conversations to take place so that kids get comfortable and confident in continuing to ask questions because they are, naturally inquisitive.
Finally, forgiveness. That may be the toughest not only for adults but for children. There's a difference between forgiveness and forgetting. You have to learn to forgive, but you can, I guess, still remember. But there's that delicate learning lesson of forgiveness. What does that mean?
Well, I think, too, like, it's okay to be disappointed, and I think, like, telling kids you have to stuff down that emotion, like, it is okay to feel that, but, like, don't hang on to it. And I think that comes, too, in parenting. Like, if, kids, have an accident or, something happens, like modeling that as a parent, like not, like don't, like kind of pick your battles in a way too, like don't maybe bring it up over and over to kind of beat the point to kids, like, and so, but like making it be okay for them to be disappointed or to be frustrated with the situation. But, I think that does come back to our own lives. Like if we're constantly, talking about the past and about, regrets and we're talking about other people and those sorts of, things that we hang on to. Like kids are listening to what we talk about. And so I think it's, again, comes down to our modeling.
You can learn more about this in the various books that have been written. Go to EmilyMadill.com. Emily Madill, our guest on the Burning Your program. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.